Previously on Higurashi When They Cry console arcs.
どうしました？赤坂警視。
Minai警部。それと大石さん。単なる偶然かもしれませんが、ちょっと奇妙なことを見つけました。
奇妙なこと？
これを見てください。
Sensing that something was off, I marked the list with a red pen. And then...
これとこれと、これが私の回った家で、これがMinai警部、これが大石さんの担当部、そしてそれぞれ奇妙な飾り付けやまじないを施していた家が。
ほほう。
Seeing them side by side on the list, the two of them noticed it too. Those 5 houses all had a certain thing in common.
そうです。みんな二世帯家族なんですよ。
さて、そういうことならとりあえず藤田くんは竹上家を重点でその周辺をお願い。花田くんは岡本家重点でよろしく。私は佐伯介護福祉センターでの聞き込みの後、畠山家の現状を確認します。で、大石さんと赤坂さんには沖宮出身の家を回ってもらいたいんですが、どうされますか？
私たちは
There were still an enormous number of families from Okinomiya. Was there something we could do to narrow it down a bit? Even split between myself and Ooshi-san, where would we start? Ooshi-san's eyes stopped at a particular name on the list. It said Kimiyoshi. Oh, here we go. Wait. The 3 great families of Hinamizawa were the Furudis, the Sonozakis, and...
その通りですよ、赤坂さん。間違いなく、これはひなみ沢の御三家の一つですね。
あ、私、夏美です。君吉、夏美。
She reflexively gave us her name, and timidly repeated it. She probably did it to show proper manners around adults, but I guess she was suddenly feeling nervous. And then, she turned her pale face this way to ask a question.
それで、私に話って何ですか？
I looked down, thinking carefully and choosing my words. Then, I slowly raised my eyes.
そうですね。私たちが聞きたいのは、
Natsumi-san's generation probably wouldn't know much about it, but...
Oyashiro-samaについてです。
Ooshi-san stared at the house with a dark expression as he quietly read the prayer.
次はここかもしれませんね。
An audible huh escaped me as I turned to look toward Ooshi-san. However, he returned the glance back at me and tried to put his thoughts into words.
被害者ですよ。いや、ひょっとしたら加害者の方かもしれませんが。
His words were ominous. I thought back on the girl who was with us until a little while ago.
君吉、夏美。
I couldn't say anything else, but I continued staring at the ritualistic decorations.
ねえ、タマコ。
何？
もしも夏美がひなみ沢出身者だったとしたら、あんたどうする？
そうだね。誰かからそれを知ったら、多分私はあの子と絶交する。
A definitive answer. Tomoko declared that in a cold tone of no hesitation. And then...
でも、もし、夏美から打ち明けられて相談されたら、私はあの子を守ると思う。誰が何て言おうと、私の大切な親友だからね。
タマコ。
Hearing Tomoko's cheerful answer, I I suddenly had to look away and think it over. And what would I do? Protect Natsumi? Or...
家に気味の悪い魔除けを飾り付けたり、変なお経を唱えたり、それにおかしな事件を起こして殺人を犯す人たち。気持ち悪いよね。私だってそんな人嫌だ。近くにも寄りつきたくないよ。
君吉。
たたりとか、お社様とか、バカバカしい。なんでひなみざわの出身だからって、そんな変な人ばかりが。いなくなればいい。みんないなくなれば、誰にも迷惑もかけなくなって。そして、
やめろよ、君吉。
Unwilling to hear any more, Akira grabbed Natsumi by the shoulders to quiet her. Tamako. The Natsumi you were talking about. That was your best friend, Natsumi Kimiyoshi. But if Natsumi stopped being your best friend, what would you do? And what would I do? I don't know. I don't know what's right anymore. And so it continues. Greetings, my name's Neosekken, and welcome back to my Let's Play of the Higurashi When They Cry console arcs. So, people are dying, people who are from Hinamizawa, because the Hinamizawa Disaster is causing a lot of the older family members in various families all over the place to go stark raving mad and do murder-suicides of either their family members or people that just so happen to be close to them when they finally go completely off the deep end. And to make matters even worse, that's starting to clearly happen with Natsumi's family. Because when the detectives got done interrogating her and tried to go back to her house, lo and behold, the house is showing very worrying decorations all over the place. So, my optimism towards seeing a happy ending for this arc is starting to wane. Because I honestly don't know how they're gonna prevent tragedy from occurring this time around, since things have already gotten as bad as they are. But who knows, maybe they'll surprise me, but I'm not getting my hopes up here. So why don't we just go ahead and just see where things will take us, shall we? Because what else can we do at this point? Tuesday, July 5th, 1983.
すみませんね。お手間を取らせてしまいまして。
いえいえ、たくさん買ってくれるお客さんは大歓迎だから。
The old woman at the station stall smiled at me as she packed the newspapers and magazines into bags. I reciprocated with an awkward smile, then pulled a 10,000 yen bill from my wallet and placed it in the money scoop.
それにしても最近は雨が降ったり止んだりで鬱陶しいよね。洗濯物を片付ける暇もないよ。
そうですね。梅雨時ですから。
台風も近づいてるって言うじゃない？
Oh boy, a typhoon!
やだね。上陸しなければいいんだけど。
ええ、まったく。
I faintly nodded, then looked at my wristwatch. I intended it as a polite, silent way of saying, please hurry up. But when I looked back at the old woman, her hands weren't moving any faster.
やれやれ。
I give up. I thought it'd be too much trouble to track down a bookstore in an unfamiliar town, so I decided to make a quick stop at a shop in the train station. But it might have been faster to go all the way to the bookstore after all. Out of the corner of my eye, I suddenly noticed the headlines on the tabloids hanging in the rack. Sitting right next to Summer High School baseball issue, I saw a magazine with a huge text taking up half the page that read, Chief Cabinet Secretary Ukuno resigns. I'm relieved that this story finally went public, but the reason for his resignation still remained a mystery. Though my investigation that was intended to shine a light on that mystery, it was proving extremely difficult.
ところでお客さん、ひょっとしてあんたも出版社の人？
どうしてですか？
先週の金曜日にもいたからね。ここでいろんな雑誌と新聞をまとめて買っていった人がさ。
そうなんですか？
I suddenly caught my breath, then turned back toward the shopkeeper right as I was about to leave. Someone was bulk purchasing magazines and newspapers from this shop. Just like I'm doing?
どんな人ですか？
顔はあんまり覚えてないけどね。スーツを着た女の人だったよ。
Minai?
こっちが話しかけても手帳に何か書き込んでて反応はほとんどなしでさ。ちょっと冷たい感じだったね。
どうして出版関係の方だと？
手に持ってた封筒に出版社の文字がちらっと見えたからね。どこの出版社だったかな。気になるライバル会社の動向でも調べてるのかいって言ったら、そんなところですって言って、あとはだんまり。
出版社
だからあんたもそうかなってさ。違うのかい？
いえ、私は。
A nosy old lady. I took a moment to calm my restless heart. Then I tipped my hat and answered her.
実は私、俳句が趣味なんですよ。手当たり次第に投稿したものですから、どれかに掲載されていないかと思いましてね。
へえ、俳句を。はい、これで全部だよ。
ありがとうございます。あ、お金はこれで足りますか？
After finally receiving my 2 bags filled with newspapers, I quickly asked her that to bring the conversation to a close. The shopkeeper punched the numbers into an old calculator to determine the total, then handed me my change.
毎度あり。載ってるといいね、あんたの作品。
ええ、ダメだったら次も頑張ってみますよ。それでは。
I smiled and gave her a bow, then turned the other way. The moment I turned my back, I felt a cold shiver run through my entire body.
ただの偶然。それとも。
I stopped in my tracks and thought about asking the shopkeeper more about that woman. But I immediately decided against it. First off, there was nothing worth searching for in this part of town. Maybe I should have lied and said I was a reporter.
しかし、私と同じか。
I suspect it's Minai. This other woman that was buying in bulk before you. I don't know who else it could be. I might be stressing over nothing, so I'll just file that away in the back of my mind for the time being. There's not much else I can do about it now. I took a few magazines out of the bag and began to read them while waiting for the train to take me home. All the magazines had headlines about the great Hinamizawa Disaster, in huge text to draw the reader's eye.
呪われた村、hinamizawaの悲劇。未曾有の自然災害は鬼のたたりか。
But despite their catchy titles, the articles themselves contained mediocre content. They contained spacious analogies, slippery slope arguments, and commentary from experts I had never heard of. It would be a real shame for any educated person to believe any of this drivel. Plus, even though the articles cited information obtained from a Hinamizawa stakeholder, they didn't identify the interviewee, which made me doubt they even interviewed anyone at all. Besides, I've experienced firsthand how difficult can be to get answers out of these stakeholders. I don't mean to insult their integrity, but I can't imagine their sources have provided any more information than ours have.
こうなると、報道というより、むしろ創作だな。
Surprisingly common.
冗談じゃない。
And the most frustrating thing of all was their total lack of sympathy for the people of Hinamizawa. You'd think they would ascribe to some level professional ethics, but that assumption would be completely wrong. also pretty common for these sorts of people. Gathering reliable evidence and deriving logical conclusions from it, and then accurately communicating that information to the public in detail. That was supposed to be the obligation imposed on journalism. It's supposed to be, yes. Nonetheless, everything they've written about Hinamizawa has been shallow, sensationalized material haphazardly thrown together to sell issues. It was a product designed to make the rest of us feel some sense of security. But I couldn't help but feel resentment toward their callous lack of responsibility.
低俗なことだ。
I'm with you there, bro. And that's not all. Convenience store magazine racks, train station shops, bookstores. No matter where I went, headlines about Hinamizawa and the Great Disaster were constantly hanging over my head. On top of that, their overstated designs and exaggerated language remind me of the bizarre decorations I saw at the Hatakeyama and Kimiyoshi houses.
それにしても2000人の生贄か気軽に書いてくれる。
Since they have no personal connection to the dead, they just see it as a number that makes their articles more enticing. A million is I'm getting tongue twisted. A million is a statistic, basically, is their mindset. They're not even considering that every one of those 2,000 people was a person with their own thoughts and dreams. Also statistics to these people. Basically, they would look at it as, okay, of these 2,000 people, how many of them want to be dentists or astronauts? Eventually, the local train heading my direction entered the station and came to a stop. Passengers spilled out as the doors opened. After the crowd dispersed, I got on the train and rested my back against the closed door on the opposite side. I noticed an abundance of advertisements hanging in the crowded car. And when I spotted the name of a certain magazine among them, I closed my eyes in frustration. After returning to Kakuchi Station, I entered Conference Room 3, the room Chief Inspector Minai reserved for us as a safe haven. Inside the room, I found Ooshi sipping tea while looking over a magazine spread out on the table in front of him. Next to his hand, I saw an ashtray overflowing with a mountain of ashes. Then Ooshi-san crushed another cigarette butt in the pile. His hair was a mess, and his eyes were bloodshot. After seeing that, I realized I never made back to the hotel last night.
おはようございます。徹夜ですか？
ああ、おはようさんです。ちょいと気になることがありましたのでね。おや？
As soon as he looked up in my face, Ooshi-san dejectedly rubbed his neck.
どうしました、赤坂さん。朝っぱらからなんだかご機嫌斜めのようですね。
The tabloids are annoying me.
いい気分にはなれませんよ。これを見てください。
After saying that, I moved 2 chairs out of the way and sat the newspapers and magazines I bought from the shop right in front of Ooshi-san. Weekly magazines, morning newspapers, tabloids, gossip magazines, women's magazines. Roughly 20 different periodicals in total.
ほうほう。これは随分買い込みましたね。何々？
Ooshi-san picked up a book and opened it, then carefully looked through the large headings in the table of contents. And then he quickly began to read the articles written within.
海地乾村2000人の死。深まる合災害の謎。人災の可能性も。に謎だらけのhinamizawa村。その謎を解き明かす。ですか？なるほどなるほど。
もっとも謎を解くという割に最後は真相は未だに闇の中。しかも論証はデタラメで 根拠がなく、真面目に読めば余計に混乱が増すばかり。
Much to the benefit of the conspirators, no doubt.
何が解明だ。
The possible causes for the catastrophe moved away from the initial natural volcanic disaster theory and into absurd national conspiracy theories, a religious group suicide theory, and even an alien invasion. Ooh, aliens. In other words, none of this provided any meaningful information about the great Hinamizawa disaster.
しかしどれも同じような内容ばかりですね。記事を書いているライターは同じ人なんでしょうか。
More like copy and pasted amongst themselves. That'd be my guess.
さあ、
Also common in mainstream media.
いずれにしても自分で見て調べたものでないことが一目瞭然です。金をもらっているプロの記者の仕事とはとても思えませんよ。
まあまあ、そう真面目に考えすぎずに、今時の記者さんは皆さんこんな感じですよ。足で情報を集めた時代はもう終わり。な
しかしですね、大石さん。
ああ、そうそう。こんな雑誌もあるんですよ。ちょっとご覧になりますか。
After saying that, Ooshi-san showed me the cover of the magazine he was reading before I came in. It was an extremely flashy weekly magazine. When I read the name, I recognized it as one that sold out at the store I went to.
今世間で一番人気のある週刊誌らしいですよ。掲載されてる情報が早くて安くて面白い。ま、その分取材先から名誉毀損とかなんだのと訴えられてて問題も多いようですがね。
Oh boy, libel.
はあ、夏のオカルト特集、Oyashiro-samaのたたり。
Oh boy, hey. Well, isn't that interesting? What do they know about the Oyashiro-sama's curse, I wonder? I caught my breath when I saw that sentence, then continued reading the content of the article. The text within read like an unsubstantiated occult story, or an urban legend. People from Hinamizawa decorate their homes with eerie ceremonial charms, and they offer prayers while conducting sacrifices and bizarre rituals. And ultimately, several incidents have happened to bystanders in the vicinity of these people. Everything. It was all true.
ちょっと待ってください。これってまさか。
いやいや、私たちの捜査内容がそのまんま掲載されていますよ。
I see. We got a leaker in our midst, do we not?
報道規制をかけてるはずなのに、どうやって入手したんでしょうね。
悪質な情報漏洩じゃないですか。一体誰がこんなことを。
Who indeed?
さあ、ただ真偽はともかく、例の一連の事件は一般に公開されていないことを考えれば、警察関係者も裏で一枚噛んでいるかもしれませんね。
So, so we learned that there was a woman in a suit with a cold attitude that was going around buying a lot of these same magazines that we did, and now we got a leak of the investigation that could only could have been done by someone who's within the police force, who's also part of the investigation, or at the very least has access to the information relating to the investigation. Minai, have you turned traitor?
にしても、開始事件からそれほど経ってもいないのに、惨劇のことまで実に詳しいもんだ。
Yeah, see, hardly any time has passed since they occurred, so they had to have been someone who was part of the investigation team, right?
感心している場合ではありませんよ。しかも紙面の足りない分は ほとんどライターのいい加減な類推と創作じゃないですか。
Hey, they gotta get their own thought. They gotta get their own inane thoughts and opinions in there somewhere. That's how these people operate. Not only that, the writer uses careful sentence structure to avoid revealing the truth behind the illusions. If a person who didn't know the truth read this, there was a substantial possibility they would accept it as fact.
まあ世間の皆さんはそういう話が好きですからね。しかもオカルト特集っていう組み方が実にあざとい。噂好きというか真実よりも刺激を求めたがる層を狙っている上、情報に対して正確性を期するという責任から巧妙に逃れている。
Plus, it seems that the women and children are able to absorb and disseminate this sort of information faster, so its influence can't be ignored. Will that cause these superstitions and self-interpretations about what happened to Hinamizawa to spread like wildfire? Probably.
このままだと、Hinamizawa出身者に対する否定的なイメージがどんどん広がってしまいます。
And that, in turn, is going to cause these people's own internal mental struggles to worsen even more, as the stigma around them continues to up the ante. And I think we all know where that's going to end up leading.
そうなれば、彼らはますます世間からの疎外感を高めて、我々の調査に協力することを拒絶するようになるんじゃありませんか。
Or, like what we saw in the last arc with Natsumi and her family, they all just killed themselves.
あり得る話です。
Or what we've seen a little bit in this arc too.
それにしてもまあ、古式にのっとるお社様信仰の厄払いをここまで詳細に書いてみせるとは。地元民でもないのによく調べていますよ、この記者さん。荒川さんっていうんですか？覚えておきましょう。
私たちとは目的も価値観も全然違うようですがね。
Well, of course they are. They're a reporter for some freaking magazine. Of course their values would be different than yours. After dejectedly saying that, I spread out the magazine in front of me again. Inside, there were black and white photographs and historical records detailing the chronology of Hinamizawa. Long ago, Hinamizawa was known as Onikafuchi Village, and the villagers allegedly had the blood of demons flowing through their veins. That was a powerful opening sentence from an occult article. In this mysterious village, strange incidents have happened on the same day every year for the past 4 years. 4 years ago, the dam construction supervisor was murdered. 3 years ago, the couple who were the primary supporters of the dam construction died falling from a cliff. Then 2 years ago, the priests of the village shrine, who held a neutral stance on the construction project, died of an unexplained illness. Everything stated here matched the facts as we knew them. It was certainly commendable that they were able to investigate a confidential matter this well. This year, a photographer, visiting the village and a nurse working in the local clinic were murdered. And the day before the great catastrophe, the shrine maiden, who the locals revered as the reincarnation of the village's guardian god, Oyashiro-sama, was found dead in the shrine.
リカちゃんのことか。
I imagined that pretty smile I saw so long ago. People from Hinamizawa believed that the gas disaster was caused by the curse of Oyashiro-sama, mourning the death of this girl. So in an effort to prevent the curse from reaching them, the villagers are devoting themselves and offering sacrifices to calm the anger of their god. Committing sacrifices to stave off death. And so, until these people can calm that anger, they'll continue to get involved. Blood calls for blood, so the blood will continue flowing. A tragedy hiding under the name of a ritual. The words were skillfully chosen to evoke the reader's interest. And then, towards the end of the article, it mentioned that a citizens group movement was seeking information disclosure from the people from Hinamizawa, and that it had already spread to the local government and the surrounding prefectures. That can't be serious. Even if the content of the magazine article was slightly exaggerated, if the speed and strength of this movement was true, it could lead to persecution of the people from Hinamizawa. Yeah, that's no good.
大石さん、これって。
ここまで影響が出ているとはね。これは予想を超える速さですよ。この情報が大メディアでも報じられるようになれば。
過剰報道です。これではまるで魔女狩りじゃないですか。
I groaned as I pounded my fist into the table. Although Ooshi-sen looked like he was calmly accepting this development, the pile of cigarettes made clear he wasn't taking this calmly.
確かに。これでは、hinamizawaの人たちすべてが恐ろしい犯罪者みたいですね。ことわざに人を見たら泥棒と思えというのがありますが、hinamizawa出身者を見たら殺人鬼だと思えとでも言うんでしょうか？
だから笑っている場合では。
まあそれはともかくとしても、赤坂さん、私が言いたいのは妙にタイミングが良すぎないかってことです。
That's also a fair point now that you bring it up.
と言いますと。
Well, the disaster just happened.
いや、情報の流れるのが少々早すぎやしないかってね。しかも妙なところで段階を踏んで具体的だ。例えばこの記事。
Ooshi-sen had a stern look in his eyes as he folded out another magazine and pointed to an article. Right there, I saw a detailed diagram listing the names of the three families of Hinamizawa. These three families are among the oldest in Hinamizawa, and they say the people in those families' lines most strongly inherited the blood of the demons. Below that explanation is listed the names Furude, Sonozaki, and Kimiyoshi. Oh, I just thought of something. If this information gets out to Natsumi's school, and the general student body ends up finding out her family's connection to all of this, I imagine her social life at school is going to get a lot more stressful very quickly. Not good. A supplemental explanation mentioned that the name Furude was related to the word divination, Sonozaki was related to intestines, and Kimiyoshi was related to demons. Fitting name. The Sonozaki, I always thought that the Sonozaki was filled with people who had guts. Of all kinds. Boo! People of good intuition could recognize this immediately.
なんでこんなことまで説明を。
爪に入ったということじゃないですか？大小の騒動をあちこちで起こして、その原因やらを噂で流布。そして最後はドーンと派手な事件を起こしてたたりを演出。なんてね。
Seems plausible. Come to think of it, it did seem like something had been guiding the information released since the incident happened. As if some sort of information manipulation was going into these periodicals. Or, well, there's no or about it. It's how these periodicals typically work anyway. Does that mean the people spreading this information are doing so with some ill intention? Ding, 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 ding! You got it!
恐怖は世間の注目を集めます。
ええ。
That was certainly true. Fear appeals to basic human instinct more than any other emotion, so it causes people to turn and look. And all this was happening unnaturally fast.
惨劇はね、人を魅了するんですよ。
For a moment, Ooshi-san's words left me unable to speak.
どういう意味？
この情報が操作されたものだとしたら、相手は恐ろしいほど頭が切れるみたいですよ。人心をよく心得ているんでしょうな。実にね。
What people are interested in, what they enjoy, and what they fear. Well acquainted with the human heart. Perhaps?
享保でしたかね。よく人の関心をそらすには、より強力なもので関心を引きつけるとね。その間に真実は闇の中。
In other words, Ooshi-san was saying that the curse was caused by human hands. Behind his words, I get the impression that there was some conspiracy behind the great Hinamizawa disaster. Someone was trying to make the disaster look like an occult phenomenon and conceal the human factors behind it, to hide the truth from the world. He was convinced of that.
そしてさっき言った爪ですよ。
爪？
奴らはおそらく最後の仕上げをしようと考えているんでしょう。
These people. Endgame. What is it? What on earth could it be?
まだこれ以上があると言うんですか？
ええ。俗に鬼の血を強く引いていると言われる御三家は合災害で全滅したわけではありません。ですから御三家の一族の誰かがひなみ沢から逃れてもなお必要にお社様に追われて、その末にたたり殺されたりでもしたらですよ。
No. Logically, it wouldn't.
全国の人々がたたりは本当にあるのだと強烈に信じると、そう思いませんか？
Rika-chan was the only member of the Furuti family, so her death ended the family line. The main Sonozaki family also died in the catastrophe, and their relatives seemed to have vanished. And the whereabouts of any relatives of the three families who moved out of the village before the great disaster were currently unknown.
そうです。君吉の一族で合災害以前に村から遠く離れたところに移住した一家がいます。
I pictured the face of Natsumi-san, the girl I met before who enjoyed talking about books. Her smile overlapped with Rika-chan's smile.
この前の君吉夏美さんのご家族ですか？
ねえ、今は君吉家のご家族さんが一番これから起こる悲惨な事件に近いのかもしれません。君吉家をさらに重点的に監視する必要がありますね。
監視？
ねえ、もしもたたりに人の何らかの関与が本当にあったとすれば、その誰かさんは君吉家に接触してくると思いませんか？
Indeed. What Ooshi-san said sounded reasonable. If the goal was to effectively disseminate knowledge of the curse to a wide area, there was a high probability that the Kimiyoshi family would be the next target, as members of one of the three families. But who among them would they target? Needless to say, they'd go for the girl born and raised in a family deeply related to Hinamizawa, but at the same time living a life seemingly unrelated to Hinamizawa. Natsumi Kimiyoshi. First off, young women have been considered the ideal choice in sacrificial rituals since ancient times. Even in modern times, when we've grown to respect human rights, that notion is so deeply rooted in the minds of people that it remains something they halfway expect. In that case, she was the perfect pawn to demonstrate the horrors of the curse to the public. she said I don't know. She claimed that the curse had nothing to do with her, and in fact it probably didn't. However, if there truly exists a plan to direct this curse, she'd become involved regardless of her intentions.
まさか大石さん。
そのまさかです。さてどうしたものか。今君吉家には巴ちゃんが言ってくれているんですよね。
I suggest that we grab a helicopter and hover over the house, with our binoculars in hands and super powerful long-distance microphones pointing in the house's general direction, and keep our eyes and ears peeled, like an orange. I recalled the incident on Saturday. We grew impatient in our search for clues the other day, and we made a terrible mistake while speaking with Natsumi Kimiyoshi. Fortunately, she didn't discover that we were detectives. But it was obviously bad form for us to continue contacting her. So we decided to let Chief Inspector Minai handle the investigation of the Kimiyoshi family today. However, Chief Inspector Minai severely reprimanded us about the circumstances at the time.
ですが大石さん、それに赤坂警視。
Chief Inspector Minai turned and glared at us with a more dangerous look than usual, and continued.
状況的にお気持ちは理解できますが、お二人とも今回の件は少々請求に過ぎます。一つ間違えれば未成年者略取で告訴されても文句は言えなかったのですよ。
いや、すみません。軽い感じで情報を聞き出すつもりだったんですが。
軽い？大人二人がかりで聞き込みを行う。それだけで女の子には心理的圧迫です。
She is right. It's not a good look, optics-wise.
もちろん彼女の家族もそうです。失礼を承知でお聞きしますが、もし警視のお子さんがその立場にあったら、警視はどうお感じになられますか？
Once she used my daughter Miyuki as an example. I couldn't say anything. Certainly, in the same circumstances, I'd be furious with those other men.
あの年くらいの女の子はすごく繊細なんです。私たち警察にとってはマニュアル通りの接触でも、やり方を間違えれば一生ものの傷になることだってあります。お願いします。
I reflected in my imprudence while receiving a scolding from Chief Inspector Minai. I should be more careful when questioning younger girls.
いやいや、ずいぶん厳しく絞られちゃいましたね。
Not so much of a pinch where you needed to freaking play hardball on her.
しかし、見ない警部の注意はもっともです。私はその点で配慮が足りなかったと反省して。
あの子の場合、それだけじゃないんでしょうけどね。
Hearing Ooshi-san's suggestive muttering, I turned my gaze his way with a dubious expression. But he didn't say anything more on the matter. He glanced at the clock on the wall and continued speaking.
とりあえず、巴ちゃんが戻ったらこの件について相談しましょう。それからです。
はい。しかし、大丈夫でしょうか。見ない警部は、南沢出身者の調査活動には、近頃、
まあ嫌な事件の連続でしたからね。介護センターのやつは特にひどかった。被疑者が3人の入居者を巻き込んで一緒に感電死ですからね。
Not a fun way to go. When Chief Inspector Minai returned to us from the scene of that bizarre incident, she suggested discontinuing the investigation. It wasn't just the incident that frightened her. It was probably the realization that our power alone was insufficient to challenge the depths of the darkness behind this series of incidents. We managed to get through to her somehow. She promised to continue cooperating, but...
しかも、あんな接触をした後ですから。 君吉夏美は完全に警戒してくると思います。見ない警部には難しい仕事をお願いしてしまいましたね。
まあ、巴ちゃんなら何とかするでしょう。なんせ、もともとは少年係の女性警官でしたからね。私たちよりも離れはしていると思いますよ。
そうなんですか？だったら。
いやいや、面目ない話です。私としたことが有力な情報を得られるかもと思ってついつい焦ってしまいましたよ。
I sensed some irritation from Ooshi-san as he said that. After all, the crisis behind this series of incidents. He recognized the crisis behind the series of incidents. The more that frustrated him, the more he wanted to hurry and force his frustration away, and that led to this mistake. Even I struggled to stay calm as I listened to Natsumi-san's story. Indeed, Ooshi-san was even more deeply involved in the disaster and the curse, so it probably weighed even more heavily on him.
赤坂さん、ああ見えて巴ちゃんはちゃんと言葉に責任を持ってくれる子です。力になってくれると言ったからにはそれ相応のことをしてくれると思います。ですから私たちは私たちでできることを片付けましょうね。
It's all on you now, Minai. You can do it!
ええ。あ、そういえば。
I told Ooshi-san about the woman in a suit that the shopkeeper mentioned earlier. Then I spread out the map and began to search for the locations of any publishing companies around this town. I was suggesting earlier that Minai could have been the woman in the suit, but honestly, if I stop and think about it for a minute, stopping to think about it for a minute, I don't really see any logical reason why she would compromise the investigation this way. But it has to be somebody who has ties to the investigation. But I just can't think of anybody. Wait a minute. Well, does Monica wear a suit in her casual wear when she's not on duty? I wonder. After taking a sip from the canned coffee she grabbed from a vending machine on the way, Tomoe muttered while looking up at the sky. The sun was shining in a bright blue sky, making it hard to believe how much it rained last night. The moisture in the air and the freshness of the early morning blend together in a soothing breeze. The roar of the cicadas could be heard coming from the row of green trees lined up nearby. It sounded like rainfall. No words could suitably describe that echoing sound.
さて、どうしたものか。
She had already scouted out the Kimiyoshi house, and she knew that the housewife Haruko was currently there. She also surveyed her husband Toji's office, and the community center that her mother Aki frequently visited. So she was perfectly prepared for this visit.
どう考えても見込みは薄そうなのよね。
Now that's an understatement. She read up on a certain document that detailed Haruko's past. Based on that, it was clear she wasn't fond of the police, and even seemed to be a little hostile. Thus, even if Tomei reached out to her, it was unlikely that she would cooperate. Toji was your typical studious businessman, heading to work early in the morning and continuing to work overtime late into the night. He had no hobbies, and practically no personal relationship with his co-workers. A boring man if I ever heard one. And he hardly ever stopped at the bars downtown, probably fearing his wife's wrath. So the old strategy of setting up an accidental meeting and then fueling the conversation with the power of alcohol was out of the question. And then, Haruko's mother, Aki.
論外か。
She never had a particularly outgoing personality. Ever since she moved to this unfamiliar town, she just shut herself in at home. Even though she had a few friends around her age, she hardly ever talked to anyone else at the community center. She was probably the person with the most direct knowledge about the curse. But if a stranger came asking about it, she probably wouldn't say anything.
そうなると、結局あの子に聞くしかないのよね。
After letting out a heavy sigh, Tomoe tossed her empty can toward a nearby trash can. The can flew with a beautiful arc, and the sound reverberated as it struck the edge of the bin. Well, at least the sound effect's appropriate this time.
嫌な役割だな。ほんと。
Natsumi Kimiyoshi. She probably lost a lot of friends in the disaster. An elderly person could deal with that. But for a child her age, the concept of people you know dying was far too alien. It put a lot of stress on one's mind and body. That wasn't just Tomoe's imagination speaking. In fact, she suffered the same thing, and her sister still had wounds from the experience.
本来なら、一番いたわってあげるべき立場の子なんだ。
Nevertheless, Tomoe needed to ask that girl about the source of her anguish, Hinamizawa. She felt conflicted.
正直に言って、自分はもうこの一連の事件から手を引きたいと考えています。
When Tomoe came back from this Sawatari Care Center, she pulled Akasaka and Ooshi into a room and began confessing how she felt to them.
見ない警部。ご無理を申し上げているのは重々承知しています。ですが、
協力を惜しむとか責任がどうとかの話ではありません。大石さんにはご恩もありますから、可能な限りは協力がしたいと思っています。いえ、いました。
ええ、それについては本当に感謝していますよ、巴ちゃん。
ですが、少なくともここ数日、自分たちが調べ歩いても得られた有益な情報はほとんどなく、逆に事態を悪化させているような感すらあります。真実を求めたい気持ちは自分にもありますし、たたりを盲信する人たちの気候は確かに気になることです。それでも彼らが惨劇を起こすきっかけを自分たちが作り出しているのだとしたら、これ以上の自分たちの関与は無益ではなく、むしろ有害と言うべきではないでしょうか。
見ない警部。
ねえ、巴ちゃんの気持ちはよくわかります。あなたのことだから臆してそう思っているんじゃないってこともね。
Ushi-sen gave her his usual gentle nod. Akasaka was able to understand Chief Inspector Minai's painful feelings as well. A tragedy had unfolded at a house they investigated previously, as if their actions steered the tragedy in that direction. Anyone would be filled with doubt after seeing that, and need to step back to reevaluate their convictions.
ですがね、巴ちゃん、この数日だけで傷害事件がいくつも発生している。それに伴う周辺住民との衝突もね。ここで私たちが引いても騒動は収まらない。
もう引き返せないってことですか。
というより私には、奴らが我々に対して捜査をやめるよう脅迫しているようにも感じられるんです。だとしたらここで引くわけにはいかないんです。
確かに舐められたら負けの商売ですからね。
あなたを巻き込んでしまったことは本当に申し訳ないと思っています。それでも私もここで引き下がるわけにはいかないんですよ。私の刑事魂にかけてもね。
大石さん、
頼みます。 あと少しだけ私に力を貸してもらえませんかね。
Tomei lightly shook her head, then raised it up. And then, for the first time, Tomei saw Ushi's true determination. She wasn't so cold-hearted to overlook that.
とりあえずここで悩んでいても仕方がない。
Visiting Natsumi Kimiyoshi's school would be a good start. And then...
あれ？
Just then, on the edge of her line of sight, she noticed a person casually sitting alone on a bench in the corner of the park. Natsumi? Even in this distance, that bright red clothing was certainly a school uniform. And then...
君吉夏美さん。
As she muttered that, Tomei took a picture out of her jacket to confirm the subject. There was no room for doubt. That girl was Natsumi, the only daughter of the Kimiyoshi family. She glanced at her watch. It was already 9:30 o'clock. She made her way through the other pedestrians, over to Natsumi. Natsumi seemed lost in thought, with a hard expression on her face. So she didn't notice Tomei approaching.
学校早退もしくは不登校か。
She didn't have time to do a proper preliminary investigation, but she hadn't heard anything about Natsumi being bullied at school. Yet. Once those periodicals that we went over earlier become mainstream knowledge, though, I bet that will change real quick. She was known for good behavior and rarely skipped class. So maybe the recent news about Hinamizawa was a factor here.
行くか。
The original plan was to stop her on her way home from school, but it was serendipitous. There's a word I never read. It was serendipitous that no other students were around at the moment. Tomei wasn't confident that any strong information would come out of this, but she felt obligated to at least try. She bought 2 cans of juice from a nearby vending machine and headed to the bench where Natsumi was seated. Then...
こんにちは。
Natsumi's head reeled up after suddenly being called out to. Since the girl looked a bit frightened, Tomei carefully approached her with a smile and asked her a question.
ここ空いてる？
はい。
ありがとう。
After a brief bow, Tomei sat down and took a deep breath. Then she opened one of the juice cans in her hand and took a light sip. The taste was a bit odd thanks to the coffee she had drank just before, but she endured it.
ごめんね。お邪魔だった？
いえ。
Despite clearly looking uncomfortable, Natsumi answered by shaking her head. She seemed to be at a loss as to whether she should get up and leave. Just as Tomei had heard, she seemed rather timid. Anyway.
突然話しかけてごめんなさい。なんだか懐かしくてね。その制服が。実はね、私、あなたの学校 OG なの。つまり先輩。数学の中村は元気？
中村先生。いえ、そんな先生はいませんが。
そっか、もう転任しちゃったか。口うるさいやつだったけど、いなくなるとちょっと寂しいわね。
After faintly looking down, Tomei let out a lonely laugh. Of course, none of that was true. She was taught that directly asking, "What school are you from?" was no way to get any information. In fact, it could make them recoil and feel frightened that another person was prying into their affairs. Makes sense. So in this case, the best way to persuade someone was to look at them from an eye level and shorten the distance from them. That was the method that the old men in charge taught her. Students who skip school, especially students that do so wearing their uniforms, tend to be actively rebelling against the school system in the first place. So they have a strong desire to seek understanding from other people, and they feel secure sharing conversations with like-minded individuals, even strangers.
それでも嘘には違いないと思います。
That was what her boss told her when she was first starting out, but she resisted the idea. So, Tomei hesitated to use the method for personal reasons, and still felt guilty about it. However, ironically enough, it was quite effective. So Tomei tried opening her heart to kids who were stepping down the wrong path in the past, and managed to rescue them from delinquency.
ごめんなさいね、勝手に喋って。あ、さっき自販機のルーレットで当たったんだけど、もしよかったら。
あ、いえ、注意しないんですか？
何を？
だって私学校を休んで。
実は私も今お仕事サボり中。こんな暑い中営業回りよ。たく、こっちの立場になれってのよ、クソ上司。だからあなたと私は同じというわけで一緒に飲みましょう。
Natsumi's shy and rigid demeanor began to soften a little. After seeing that, Tomei began feeling a bit more mischievous and pressed the juice can against her neck.
冷たっ。何するんですか？
ねえ、よく冷えてるでしょ。私2本も飲めないし、ぬるくならないうちにね。
はあ。
Natsumi reluctantly accepted the can of juice from Tomei, or at least she seemed reluctant. Then she pulled up on the tab and took a big gulp.
おいしい。
よかった。オレンジジュースは好き？
あ、はい。私炭酸ってちょっと苦手で。
わかるな。喉がイガイガするんだよね、あれ。私の周りの連中は美味しいって言うんだけど、何がいいのかな？
本当ですよね。ジュースはやっぱり甘くて、普通に冷たい方が飲みやすいです。
へえ、気が合うわね。
Who drinks orange soda warm?
あ、私はともえっていうの。見ないともえ。よろしくね。
あ、私は夏美です。よろしくお願いします。
Natsumi finally started to open her heart, and she gradually began to smile. Then she started laughing adorably along with Tomei.
さて、どう話を持っていこうかな。
Tomei began to think it might be time to move away from safe topics like school, and began talking about Hinamizawa. Issues with skipping school can generally be remedied with family counseling. But in this case, it was a necessary element in Natsumi's interrogation. What would be the best way to address the topic without making her jump on the defensive? That was a tough question. A single misplaced word could make all the work spent curating this cheerful atmosphere go to waste.
と言っても、ひなみざわの話題を自然に持ち出す流れなんて、どうやったら。
I say just keep talking for now, and you'll know the best opportunity when you see it. You just gotta have good intuition. Just then.
あれ？
Suddenly, Tomei noticed a newspaper stuffed in a plastic bag next to Natsumi's seat. On one side of the bag, the headline, Great Hinamizawa Disaster Investigation, was clearly written in bold typeface.
ねえ、その新聞は？
Even though it was a casual question, Natsumi shrank down again, and her peaceful expression from up until a moment ago froze away.
これは。
たくさん買うのね。お父さんが読むの？
いえ、お母さんが買って。
After she groaned those words out, Natsumi fell silent. Feeling uncomfortable with the reaction, Tomei looked down and tried to think of a way to steer this conversation. Then she spoke in a gentle tone.
ねえ、夏美ちゃん。新聞ならちょっと見せてくれない？うん、今日の夜に見たい特番があったのよね。ちょっと確認を。
ダメです。
Tomei pulled her outstretched hand away, dumbfounded. When Natsumi noticed that reaction, she immediately returned to herself. She looked away with a shocked expression as she caught her breath.
ごめんなさい。私。
え？あ。
After that, Tomei noticed a cold sensation on her feet and turned her head downward. Uh-oh, you spilled your drink. Looking there, she saw that her can of juice had fallen out of her hand and rolled on the ground, splattering onto her shoes.
すぐ拭きますから。本当にごめんなさい。
あ、気にしないで。これくらいなんとも。
However, Natsumi took a tissue out of her pocket and squatted down, and carefully wiped Tomei's shoes with no concern about getting her hands dirty. Tomei looked astonished as she watched the scene unfold.
いい子なんだな。本当に。
The more she felt it, the more it hurt. Natsumi's awkward reactions and guilty conscience were probably influenced by her ties to Hinamizawa. Even so, she hadn't done anything wrong. Just because she was from Hinamizawa, why did she have such a painful look in her eyes?
すみません。私、もう。
Hinamizawa大災害か。新聞って買ってよね。
え？
After Tomei said that, Natsumi immediately stopped what she was doing and stood up. And in doing so, revealed her true feelings. Although Tomei felt a little regret about what she had said, she looked up toward the heavens and continued speaking.
たたりだかなんだか知らないけど、人が2000人も亡くなってる大災害を何だと思ってるのかしら。残った遺族とか友人とか辛い思いで悲しんでる人はまだいっぱいいるのに、いい加減な記事を書いてるのって私は好きじゃない。新聞とか雑誌とかニュース番組とか、ああいったものを作ってる人たちにとって他人の不幸はただの商品なんだよね。そのせいで忘れたいことを無理やり思い出して悲しんだり苦しんだりする人の気持ちなんて全然分かっちゃいない。それが事実の報道ならまだいいわ。でも本当にあったことを面白がってねじ曲げたりこじつけたりでっち上げたり、それを見て被害者が、そしてその家族や友人たちがどれだけ辛い思いをするかなんて考えたりもしないでしょ。人を傷つけておいて何がマスコミの正義を。
As if they ever had integrity.
聞いて呆れるわ。
ともえさん。
Tomei wasn't the type to pry into the affairs of others. She still recalled the incident from 12 years ago, when her home burned down and claimed the lives of both her parents. And at the time, it wasn't just the death of their parents that haunted Tomie and Madoka. Over time, the press overwhelmed them with sensationalized stories about the incident. The death of her parents, her sister's hospitalization, and her own future. Countless reporters came to Tomei for interviews, even as she was struggling to deal with her personal tragedies. Publishing things like, "Why was this detective/father targeted?" "Conspiracy hidden behind the investigation he was undertaking," and so forth. Tomei didn't know the truth, so she was honest with them about how little she knew. But she was shocked to learn that they rewrote her words without her permission, twisting them into criticism against the police, telling a completely different story.
何のことはない。私たちを出しにして、連中は警察、お上の批判をしたかっただけなんだ。
Disgusting shit, isn't it? In addition, there was an article suggesting that Tomei was the actual target of the fire. Someone jealous of all the success Tomei was attaining as a high school athlete started the fire to bully her, and her parents' deaths were just an unfortunate consequence of that. Thanks to that, the police began to interrogate the other athletes that Tomei competed against, which made them resent how much it got in the way of their practice. Eventually, someone brought up the fact that Monica came home late on the day of the incident and was in a rebellious phase, which cast suspicion on her.
じゃあ、父さんと母さんが死んだのは私たちが原因か？ふざけるな！
How much did these articles contribute to the heartbreak Tomei and her sister endured? They didn't know for sure. It might be better not to know. And once the readers grew bored and weary, they lost all concern for the girls and clambered on to the next topic. Of course, Tomei didn't think everyone was like that. But she was never able to dispel her distrust for the media after that.
ペンは剣よりも強しなんて言うけど、そんなものじゃないわ。むしろ、ペンは剣よりもひどしって言うべきでしょうね。
I like that analogy. I think I'll keep it.
もっとも、多数決社会じゃ大した問題にもならないんでしょうけど、一般のその他大勢が喜べば、ごくわずかな少数派のことなんか知ったことかなんてね。ごめんなさい。私ったらつい。
いえ、巴さんの言ってること、なんとなくわかります。
Natsumi rolled up the tissue and sat on the side of the bench, then sat back in her original seat and continued.
ちゃんとわかりもしないで、自分の常識の枠内で決めつけて、無責任に言って騒ぐのは楽しいですよね。言われる相手の都合とか、事情とか、そんなのお構いなし。結局、自分が一番なんですよ。みんな。
夏美さん。
でも、
Natsumi let out a sardonic chuckle as she looked up at the sky.
叩かれる方にも、問題はあると思います。馬鹿正直に勝手に信じて、思い込んで、裏切られて、傷つく。だったら最初から信じなきゃいい。誰も近づけず、一人でいれば、悩むことなんて何もない。それに、心をクリアにして、相手がなんで私に近づくのかを考えてみれば、大体のことは感じます。結局、ただの打算だって。でしょ？
それは、でも、
同情しているように見せかけても、本当はただ面白がっているだけ。優しく振る舞う自分に酔っているだけ。それなら、無視されている方がずっとマシ。見下されているみたいだし、本人はいたわってるつもりで満足しているかもしれないけど、傷の痛みも知らないくせに、どれだけ私を傷つけているか、その子たちはきっとわからない。わかるわけない。わかってたまるか。 友達だから何が友達だ。勝手に助けておいて結局自分の手に負えないと分かったら最後は知らないふりして。期待してたんですよ。ひょっとしたら助けてくれるかもって。それを裏切られた時どんな気持ちになると思いますか。だったら最初から期待なんてしなきゃいいんだ。
君吉さん。
Tomei was mortified after realizing she blurted out a word she shouldn't know. But Natsumi didn't seem surprised at all, and turned toward her with a sarcastic smile.
ああ、やっぱり刑事さんだったんですね。
Well, she knew. Well, this is awkward.
なんとなくそんな気がしてました。で、さっきまでの話、どこまでが本当なんですか？ひょっとして全部嘘？私を騙して何かを聞き出すつもりですか？とんでもないペテン師ですね。みんな一緒。見せかけだけの親しさと優しさで近づいて私のことを裏切るんだ。そんな汚い人間のクズみたいな真似までしてひなみ沢の何を知りたいんですかねえ。
違うわ、私は。
黙れ！
The sudden roar made Tomei freeze and hold her breath. The gentle atmosphere faded away in an instant. It felt like countless sharp needles were stabbing into her body, paralyzing her limbs, and all she could do was shiver. She couldn't even breathe. She felt like she was on the verge of fainting. It seemed like she could hear the sound of all the blood coursing through her body. Doing her best to cling to her sanity, Tomei stared back at the girl in front of her. This was not the weak-minded Natsumi Kimiyoshi who was here a minute ago. It was so terrible she had to look away. Her fangs were exposed. This was the form of a demon. Several large globs of sweat were flowing down her forehead, then dripped from the tip of her jaw. Time seemed to stop, leaving behind this illusion. She could no longer hear the ambient noise of her surroundings. Her field of vision narrowed and filled with colorful static. The repeated blinking of the harsh lights drowned out the contours of the world.
刑事さん、いえ、巴さん。
After a brief withdrawal, Tomei finally returned to herself. She put her full strength into her trembling fists.
あなたの嘘はともかく、話を聞いてくれたことは嬉しかったです。それは本当ですから。それじゃあ、さよ。
待って、夏美さん。
Natsumi had already grabbed her bag and gotten up from the bench when Tomei reflexively called out to her. Natsumi made it several steps ahead before stopping with her back turned to Tomoe.
なんです。あなたもひなみ沢のことで何かを知りたいんですか？おあいにくですが、知りたかったら他を当たってください。もっとも資料とかで調べる以上のことが出てくるとも思えませんが、ただ私に聞いても期待しているようなことは何も。
そうじゃない。そうじゃなくて。
She spoke with all her might. Tomei was no longer speaking as a detective when she said that. Her tongue became tangled. Her throat was clogged, and it hurt to breathe. Even so, she shared Natsumi's same pain. and Tomei couldn't stand idly by as the little girl was about to be consumed by the same darkness as her.
騙したことは謝るわ。ごめんなさい。でも、夏美さん、あなたはそれでいいの？何も信じなくて、すべてを疑って、それで本当にいいの？
いいも何もないですよ。これがただ一つの、一番正しい方法。そうでしょ。
本当に？私にはそう見えない。だって、あなたは本当はそう思ってないでしょ？ただそう思おうとしているだけじゃない。あなたは自分の作ったありもしない悪人だけの世界が全てだと勝手に思い込んでる。
随分決めつけるんですね。あなたに私の何がわかるんですか？
わかるわよ。さっきも言ったでしょ。私もあなたと同じだったから。私もね、あなたと同じように絶望して何もかも信じられなくなったことがある。たった一人で悩んで苦しんで、どうして私だけがこんな目にって世の中全てを恨んだりもしたわ。でもね、何も信じられないのって本当に辛いことなの。疑えば疑うほど周りの人は私のことを信じてくれなくてどんどん離れていく。みんなだからずっと自分が一人ぼっちで寂しくて怖くて悲しくて。夏美さん、あなたは耐えられるの？私には耐えられなかった。
At one point, Tomei was just like that. She was overwhelmed with despair and considered ending it all. Studying desperately to keep up in school while working part-time to afford living expenses, and taking care of her sister. She thought it was painful, but she kept going and didn't complain. But whenever she saw children around her age having fun on Christmas and New Year's, it made her feel lonely, even jealous. Still, she believed that her efforts would eventually lead to happiness, so she kept struggling forward, doing her best. Tomei endured that daily routine, spending no time for personal enjoyment and hardly having the time to breathe. Then one day, her beloved sister moved out and left a letter behind. She felt heartbroken at the time. And even now, she felt that despair in her dreams. The cold rain beat down on her. She lost something precious, and she felt exhausted after dragging her feet up and down the alley searching for it. And then... She couldn't bear it any longer. Her face soaked with rain and tears. Tomei spit out those dark feelings like she was coughing up blood. Her voice rang out as she began to cry. Why? Why only me? What did I do? I gave up the things I wanted, and this is the result of all the hard times I've endured? That person does whatever they please, living their life with not a care for my feelings. Why only me? In that case, what am I really working towards? Why do I endure all of this? If I can never be happy, what is all this suffering and sorrow even for? That's it. It's time to end this. All of it. Everything. How doesn't matter. I'll give up this worthless mind and body for someone. Somewhere. Right. I thought I was at the end there.
おやどうしましたお嬢さん。 こんなところで寝ていては風邪ひいちゃいますよ。
Even now, she still couldn't forget that favor. Thanks to him, Tomei was able to reach out to people who knew her parents, and that made her the person she is now. Good going, Ooshi.
あの時のことがなかったら、私はどうなっていたかわからない。でも、私はその時わかったの。私を裏切る奴もいるけど、それ以上に大切に思ってくれる人も絶対にいる。自分が最後まで諦めなければ。今でも自分の親しい人たちに裏切られるかもって思って不安になって怖くなる時もある。だけど世界は冷たいばかりじゃない。それに相手の優しさには打算とか悪意もあるかもしれないけど、その気持ちそのものの温かさはきっと本物なのよ。
綺麗事ですね。虫唾が走りますよ、そんなの。
いいじゃない、綺麗事だって。いつか死ぬ直前になって自分の記憶の中を真っ黒に塗りつぶしたくなるような思いをするくらいなら、ずっとそっちの方がマシよ。やってみたこともやってみようとも思わなかったあなたにそんなこと言わせない。私が味わった地獄まで否定するな。
After Tomei finished her speech, Natsumi seemed to recoil in response, and her shoulders turned ever so slightly back. At that moment, Tomei finally realized that she was crying. And while staring at the blurry figure of Natsumi's back, she wanted to believe that her words reached Natsumi, at least a little.
ねえ、夏美さん、誰も信じられないなんて、そんなこと思わないで。あなたにも優しさを向けてくれる人がいるでしょ。友達とか家族とか、その人たちはきっとあなたのことを。
いませんよ。
え？
Slowly, Natsumi turned to face Tomoe, with no light in her eyes, as cold as before. However, behind all that, Tomei felt like she saw her shaking.
家族なんか私にはいません。私の幸せを奪っていくような人たち、私の家族じゃないです。
夏美さん。
巴さん、もっと早く、そうすればきっと。さよなら。話せて嬉しかったです。
And this time, Natsumi left the vicinity without looking back. For a while, Tomei just stood there, quietly staring at the park entrance. How much time had passed? Tomei sat on the bench feeling helpless, that her efforts were in vain. She had gotten emotional while telling her story to Natsumi. She was surprised. And in the end, she didn't gain any useful information.
あれ？
Tomei reluctantly got up from the bench to make her way back to the station. And as she did, she noticed something out of place and turned to the side. A lovely little pink box was sitting there.
コンパクトじゃない。ピルケース？
A pill case? That wasn't Natsumi's, was it? As she opened the lid, she noticed 6 capsules stored in 2 packages inside. She checked the serial numbers on the back, but she found numbers and letters she had never seen before.
これって誰の？
By removing the contents, she was able to see something written on the bottom of the case. The name of Natsumi Kimiyoshi was written there in clear handwriting. Maybe it fell out of her pocket when she pulled out the tissue to wipe Tomei's shoes.
こんな箱に入れてるってことは常備薬？
If that was the case, she needed to return it right away. After that thought, Tomei rushed up and ran after Natsumi. But just then, her pager made an annoying sound.
もうタイミング悪いわね。
Tomei reluctantly ran to the nearest unoccupied phone booth, lifted the receiver, tossed in a 10-yen coin, and dialed the Kakuchi Station Criminal Investigation Division.
もしもし、こちら刑事一課。
藤田くん？見ないです。私のベルに連絡があったんだけど。なんですって？
Oh, what now?
畠山家でまた事件？それで内容は？
Uh-oh. In shock with her eyes open wide, Tomei returned to the nearest handset to return the handset to the hook.
なんてこと！
The incident that Fujita had just informed her of. The Hatikiyama family, from the incident the other day, were gunned down with a hunting rifle. Oh, shit. Later, Wednesday, July 6, 1983.
なるほど。そんなことがあったんですか。
ええ。力が及ばず、本当に申し訳ありません。
Chief Inspector Minai held the steering wheel and continued looking in the direction she was driving as she explained the circumstances to us in the back seat.
まあそんなに自分を責めずに。巴ちゃんでダメなら私たちならもっと拉致が開きませんでしたよ。ねえ赤坂さん。
He's right.
ええ、全くです。
I agreed with a strong conviction in my voice. And hopefully, that got through to Chief Inspector Minai. At least a little.
それにしても。
どうしました？
よくテレビではキレるなんて言葉を使いますが、最近の子って難しいですよね。
キレる？
Chief Inspector Minai rubbed her neck as she described her meeting with Natsumi Kimiyoshi the other day.
学校とか近所の聞き込みでは引っ込み思案なおとなしい子だって話でしたが、わからないものです。あんな風に怒声を上げるほどに気が強いとはちょっと意外でした。
気が強い？
Hearing that word made me feel uncomfortable. I only met her once, but I didn't sense even an ounce of aggression in her. In fact, even when she was feeling uncomfortable, she seemed like the kind of girl who didn't even have the will to escape, didn't she?
まあそこの母親は勘の強い方だって有名みたいですからね。その娘も性格はどこか似てくるものですよ。ね、赤坂さん。
ええ、そうですね。
But I wondered if that was really the reason. Just then.
助けてあげたいんです。彼女のこと。
Unable to understand what Chief Inspector Minai was getting at, I suddenly raised my head. I saw through the rearview mirror that she was looking straight ahead. But in her eyes, I noticed a shimmer of loneliness.
昔の私とどこか似てるなって。立場と状況が違えば、私もああなっていたかもしれませんし。
巴ちゃん。
We fell silent. The car continued approaching Kakuchi Station at a gentle speed. Meanwhile, The three of us couldn't say anything. We were lost in our heartfelt thoughts. Even though I think I'm cutting it a bit short here, I think I'm going to go ahead and stop the episode here, because I have a feeling that this scene that we're about to witness will go on for a good, decent while. On top of that, I feel like this is a good... I feel like intuition's telling me that this is a good place to stop regardless. But yeah, I mean, can't say I'm exactly feeling smug or pleased to see that my suspicions over how this thing's gonna go is being proven right so far. But well, things are still going downhill for Natsumi in particular, and despite our best efforts to reach out to her, it doesn't really seem to be working. And as a result, my optimism wanes even further still. I have a feeling that we should just brace for the inevitable at this point. Call me a doomer if you must, but I'm just being honest here. I really don't want things to end on another sour note, but again, I just honestly don't see it. It's getting hard for me to see it ending any other way at this point. I just don't know what they could do to just stop things from just going south all the way through. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this latest episode of the Higurashi Win the Cry console arc set. If you did, and you want to see more content from me, feel free to subscribe to my channel, leave a like, comment if you want, and I will see you all next time. Take care.